Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. So welcome to Coffee Talk. We are your hosts, the Department Southborough Youth and Family Services. My name is Sarah Castle. I am the Director of Southborough Youth and Family Services. And with me this morning, we have our Assistant Director, Megan Island. Hello, Megan. Shannon Kaniman, our program coordinator, is not available to join us this morning. Thank you, everybody, for your flexibility with joining us on Wednesday morning this week instead of Tuesdays, our usual day. But we're pleased to have Lisa Avery Peck back with us to co-host this morning. Lisa is our graduate clinician who's going to be working with us this year. So thank you, Lisa, for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Oh, good. And we're excited to have Southborough's own Chief Paulhus from the Southborough Police Department with us on today's show, as well as Sheena Mahoney. Sheena works for Advocates, and she is a supervisor for the Jail Diversion Program. We're very excited to have the two of you on today's show because we think that the collaboration that's happening between Advocates and the Southborough Police Department is a very important one, and one that we would really like residents to know about. So cheers. Good morning, everybody. I have my iced coffee. It feels terrible to be drinking iced coffee this morning. But I guess I'm not ready for summer to be over. And I was actually on my way in this morning. It's been such a hectic week that I was on my way in this morning, and I was almost at the office and realized I hadn't yet eaten anything or had any coffee, which is the problem before coffee talk in the morning. So I had to make a quick pit stop on my way in. But so thank you so much for being here, everybody, this morning. As I mentioned, we are excited to talk about the collaboration that Advocates has with the Southborough Police Department and with other police departments in other communities. And we'll hear from both Chief Paulhus and Sheena a little bit more about that. Before starting, Chief Paulhus, I had an opportunity to hear you speak earlier this year in June in response to at the Vigil for Peace and Racial Justice that happened back in June that our community put together. And one of the things that you said that really stuck with me when you spoke was you said the relationship in the community appears to be strong. However, like any relationship, it's important that it's built upon a foundation of trust and respect and communication, and that those things are really important to maintain that relationship. And I just wanted to highlight that because I think that really speaks volumes as to why we wanted to have you guys on the show today and why we think that this particular topic is so important, because it's about trying to increase responsiveness to the community and building community. So thank you again for being here. Lisa, I know you were going to ask some questions.
Yeah, so Chief Paulhus, I'm new to the community, and I wondered if you could share how long you've been a police officer.
Coincidentally, this month in the profession, 30 years.
Wow.
So I actually started out for about a year and a half working in a maximum security prison in Rhode Island, which is the toughest job that I ever had. And thinking about this appearance, grew up in a suburban town, middle-class household, and went into that environment. And that was probably my first introduction to people with serious mental health issues. And then from there, I was hired in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, which is a urban community not very high income, a lot of social troubles. But it was a great place to work, a great police department. I was there for about 22 years. I retired as a captain, and I was lucky enough to come over to Southborough in February of 2014. And I'll be here 7 years in February. Time flies.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. That's awesome. That's great. Well, so Chief Paulhus, when we had touched base prior to you guys coming on today's episode about what we would talk about, and you highlighted this just a second ago, that one of the things you said to me was that over the course of your career, you have seen an increased need for mental health services. And I wonder if you could share with our viewers a little bit, or share with us about how that has impacted the work that police officers do.
Yeah, just a lot of thought and thinking about this over my career, and certainly we've seen an influx. I remember back at my old job, there was a large facility in northern Rhode Island, and I think it was late 90s, early 2000s that closed, and we started to see a big influx into the community of people with mental health issues. And I was reminded, I went to a recent training, I think I shared this with you. So basically, the number of beds for mental health patients is about 10% of what it was in 1960. The only problem with that, a bigger problem with that, is the US has doubled the population. So we went from about 600,000 inpatient beds to about 60,000 today, and the population has doubled from 150 million to over 300 million people. And of course, with this social change, the police had to deal with the service. And obviously, we probably weren't trained or prepared enough. And I think we're still working to get up to speed today. So something that we'll hear Sheena talk about, a jail diversion program. I think in the past, some of the ways we dealt with these emergency mental health issues is to solve the problem right away. And oftentimes, the only tool that we had was placing the person under arrest and sending them into the court system. So hence the name of our program with advocates, Jail Diversion. We want to recognize what the person needs for help and steer them away from the court system.
That's great. I appreciate that explanation and the background for how this program came to be, because that makes a lot of sense. I don't know that, when I was thinking about it, that I was thinking about it in terms of this is for the general public, anybody, that we're trying to divert people to different types of services rather than, what may have been happening in the past is being put under arrest and going to jail. So, Chief Paulhus, you mentioned preparation and training. Can you talk a little bit more about what sorts of trainings police officers go through currently to help them in their responsiveness to mental health needs?
Yeah, certainly. We've really started to come up to speed in the last 5 years or so. I can recall 10, 15 years ago when officers started to deal with these problems, we would get people from mental health organizations to appear at roll calls and just try to describe, different mental health issues and what services were available. And it might last 5 or 10 minutes. And it really was something that we were lacking in. In Southborough, certainly since I've been here, we have a policy on dealing with the mentally ill. We're an accredited agency, and part of that accreditation says that once a year we have to have training in that mental health policy, which is about 12 pages long. The police academy started to institute yearly training on different topics, along with their in-service for the recruits. And then also when we partnered with advocates, they brought about the 8 hours of mental health first aid training. So we've been participating in that, and certainly always evolving. Something that you've heard in the police profession, more training in de-escalation tactics. And I would really emphasize that we're probably using that additional training in de-escalation. Certainly, if somebody's having a mental health issue and you call the police, they're having an acute episode. So the training has evolved, and it's certainly getting more and more intense, and we're working our way through it every year. So it's getting better and better, still has a long ways to go.
Right. It feels as though, you know, I say this all the time, this is our arena. This is what we do in our office, is mental health services. And it feels like the need has increased over time. But I also like to think about the silver lining, that I also think that the stigma is decreasing, and that people are becoming more and more comfortable reaching out for help, which is wonderful, but it also means that, you know, we do have a long way to go. We have, you know, there's never enough services, and it's just wonderful to hear, you know, that our community's own police department is also working on, you know, seeing how they can increase their training and responsiveness to those needs.
Excuse me 1 second, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it on.
Do you have to wave your arms? So let's see. Well, actually, Sheena, I wanted to turn the conversation over to you for a minute, and find out a little bit more about the jail diversion program and about what you do and the staff that you supervise. So your title is, you're a supervisor to the jail diversion program, and this program is through Advocates, which is an agency, a local agency that we're very familiar with. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Advocates and the jail diversion program, as well as, you know, what your staff does specifically.
Sure. So Advocates is a very large agency. We cover a wide range of services, from residential to outpatient to substance abuse, and we have sort of different service lines that support our community here. And part of what that is including, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is psychiatric emergency services. And my boss, Director Dr. Sarah Abbott, started the jail diversion program in 2003. She was working at Psychiatric Emergency Services in Framingham. And then Chief Craig Davis had called over and was looking for help over at the Framingham Police Department. They were noticing that they, similar to what Chief Paulhus was saying, they were sort of dealing with the same people over and over. And the solutions that they had were either to maybe arrest them or send them to the hospital. And then the hospital would see them and say, hey, they're fine, and kick them right back out. And the police were understandably frustrated with that. And the people weren't really getting the support that they needed. So since that time, we've sort of expanded and grown. We're now in 15 different communities, working with 15 different police departments. And we are able to really see a person's environment. The police are called to all kinds of things, and we get to ride along with them in the cruiser and really get to experience firsthand the crisis that somebody is in when they're calling 911 or they're calling the police for support. And that gives us a broader picture of what is going on. And as master's level clinicians, we're able to sort of do the assessment, assess for safety, figure out the risk, and then determine what is the most appropriate level of care, whether we're maybe calling over to you guys for a referral for somebody who needs counseling, maybe calling over to a detox to see if somebody needs to get into some sort of treatment, or in the cases of sort of extreme risk and danger, sending somebody to the hospital to get the treatment that they need. But again, because we've been able to sort of see and observe somebody's environment, maybe they're living in a hoarded house, or they're in a domestic violence relationship that people aren't really sort of able to witness. We've got a lot more background information to sort of support the case and figure out how to get the person the care that they need.
So I know Megan was going to ask you a question about psychiatric emergency services. I'd love to just highlight what this looks like, the jail diversion program, what it looks like in Southborough specifically. And so Chief Paulhus or Sheena, if you want to chime in, my understanding is that we have an assigned clinician who works with Southborough, but do you want to expand on that a little bit more? Either way.
Yeah, so Southborough is actually one of our regional programs. They share a clinician with Westborough and Northborough. The clinician can rotate through each department, but there's mutual aid agreements where if the clinician maybe is in Southborough or in Westborough needs her, they can sort of bring her to the scene or do a sort of a handoff and get her to wherever she needs to be within those 3 towns. And again, I mean, we're stationed in police departments. I actually oversee 2 of our regional programs and our program in Marlborough, but I'm still co-responding. So I'm in the police department. We're going to roll calls. We are, like I said, in the cruisers with the officers going to sort of everything that they go to. And then if the officers notice that we can be helpful in a case, they'll ask us to sort of come out and do an assessment.
That's great. That's wonderful. Well, I know, for our department, we have really appreciated that this clinician being in with the Southborough Police and collaborating with her, and it's a wonderful opportunity for the community to have this collaboration existing, because I think it's helpful to the police, it's helpful to the residents. We appreciate it, so it's really wonderful.
I just want to, if I could add in a few words. So obviously, to go to the police and say we're going to have a civilian healthcare clinician riding around with you in the cruiser, obviously there'd be some resistance to that, just because it's unknown. I want to say, I believe Framingham was the first in the nation to adopt such a program, and that was, getting close to 20 years ago now. So when we joined with advocates, we could have our offices call over to some of the surrounding communities, including Framingham and Ashland. And the offices there, Hopkinton, said that they just loved the program. They were totally on board with it. And that sold the program. And although we've only been in it for a short time, it's just been a resounding success. We'd love to have our own full-time, and working with us instead of sharing with the 3 towns. Because obviously officers don't enjoy going to these calls. They'd rather that the person gets help, or, they can settle it, without having to resort to arrest or solve a problem. So it's just been a resounding success. I think you heard about this, some of the, and nationally, some of the defund the police and put more resources into social service work. Hey, we're all for it. If we can limit our workload or somehow make it safer or better, we're all for it.
That's right. That's great.
I'd really like to say, we're honored and privileged to be accepted into these police departments. Police have a very serious job, and their main goal is really just to ensure the safety of the community that they work in. And we're able to sort of offer our own different skill set. But we really couldn't have as great of an impact that we do without them. Because again, sometimes people get into an ambulance and they get up to the hospital and they can present incredibly differently. So being able to sort of be right there on the scene, knowing that we're safe with the police presence, but really getting to sort of support that person in the moment. We do assessments, but we also do a lot of other things as well. We're able to, like I said, sort of provide support for domestic violence and substance abuse. But we're also there to support people in the community, maybe when they've lost a loved one. It's one of the most sort of profound and honoring situations that we get to participate in, and that police do more often I think people realize. And being able to sit there with that person in that moment and offer that support is incredibly powerful.
It's true. True. It's, yeah, I love that image that comes up for me, that you, both the clinician and officers together, are able to support a resident. The clinicians feel safe in that environment because they have officers with them, and the officers probably feel an immense amount of help by having the clinicians there with them. So that's a really beautiful collaboration there. Yeah, great.
Something that I wanted to bring up before we sign off, I think that some residents do have some frustration when we go to an initial call and maybe we don't have all the information yet, and we take steps to protect ourselves and everybody on scene for everybody's safety. And I think we were reminded of that back in June, where we had a subject in our lobby who advocates worked with us, and we decided to sign some section paperwork to give the person help. And unfortunately, they attacked one of the officers on duty in a very serious manner. So I think they also have to understand that first thing is we provide for the safety at the scene, and then we try to work from there. And certainly the advocates being with us adds to that de-escalation factor, but there's always a safety factor that we have to deal with, on initial arrival. So if anybody's watching out there, we try to do the best we can with it, but you have to understand that we have to establish that first and then go from there.
Megan, I know you had a question about psychiatric emergency services.
Yeah, yep. And so Sheena, you had mentioned that's another service provided by advocates. And so that's a mobile crisis number that we give to residents and that we use ourselves sometimes, that people can use in an emergency for mental health support. But a question we get sometimes is when to use psychiatric emergency services versus calling 911 or calling the police. And people also sometimes they wonder what to expect when they call PES. So I was wondering if you might be able to address those questions.
Absolutely. I think Chief Paulhus sort of just touched on it just now. I think when there's sort of any element of danger or sort of an immediacy, that's when we're going to ask you to call 911. People don't really want the police at their home all the time. They get worried about what their neighbors are going to think or what's going to happen. But they're really going to be the ones who are going to be best equipped to keep everybody safe in that situation. And that's why our partnership is so successful. But psychiatric emergency services is available 24/7. If you have a question about services, or maybe it's not as immediate and you need support in terms of getting connected to something or getting an evaluation done to figure out what's going to be most appropriate for you, they're available for those kinds of things. Like I said, we're sort of an offset of that. We sort of do the similar kind of work and the similar assessment, just in a different setting. We have partnerships with several of our local emergency departments where we have teams who are going to do similar assessments. But when you call PES, you're getting somebody to talk to immediately any time of the day, and sort of help you figure out what your next steps are in terms of support. And they've been really great with sort of the telehealth and everything through COVID. We never stopped co-responding during the pandemic. We've been in our departments, sort of putting on our PPE, responding to the community, same as the police have. But PES has done a really great job for the people who are able to have phone check-ins or like video conferences, similar to what we're doing right now. So that for me would be like the big difference is if there's a danger element and an immediacy that needs to happen, that's when we would ask you to call 911. If things are maybe not quite to that crisis point and are getting there and you have some questions, probably call PES. And like we're all on the same team, we all use the same system, so we're actually sort of communicating with each other all the time anyway.
I was just going to say, you know, we have had in our own experience working with PES that, you know, for someone who might be in an emerging crisis situation, I would just say not to worry about knowing exactly which place to call, because I know PES will help you assess that situation, and they will call the Southborough Police if they feel there's an imminent harm or danger there, and will help with assessing what the most appropriate response is. We've had that happen, which, you know, can sometimes be off-putting to residents, but I just echo what Chief Paulhus said, that, and what you said, Sheena, about the bottom line being about safety. So if there's any concern with that, that's going to be the first thing that is going to be addressed. And then, you know, other forms of support will come after that. Chief Paulhus, did you have anything else to add to what Sheena said about psychiatric emergency services or anything else we've talked about today?
No, I think it's great. I think we can also touch on, I know we spoke about it, is getting a better relationship between the police, possibly advocates, and youth and family. I think there's a lot of things that we might be funneling to advocates, which would be better addressed, you know, continually through your office and building the relationship. And I know we talked about, I'm going to put out having a liaison officer with youth and family. You've come to roll calls to discuss what you do down there. I'm going to ask you for some more of the handout cards that we can use on our calls. I know the officers are all carrying them in their bags now. So I think we're, like, you know, Sheena said and you said, we're all on the same team, and we just gotta make sure that nobody's left out or overlooked, or we do the follow-up. So we're happy to be a partner.
Yeah, and I would add, you know, I go back to what I heard you speak about back in June, is you said the police are the community and the community are the police. Who was that? Robert Peel you quoted? I'm not familiar. I had to look him up, but that part of our part, what was it?
Interesting guy. If you read his 9 principles,
yeah,
applicable today as, you know, they were in the 1800s.
Yeah, I noticed that. But that, you know, that is also a member of this collaboration. You know, we're highlighting what we're doing as 3 different organizations, but we, you know, appreciate the collaboration of the community too, and being on our team as well, and noticing, you know, hopefully feeling, seeing where we're all coming from and how we're all trying to work together to support the needs of the community. So I want to thank you both for coming on today, and for giving us some of your time. I know you're both busy people. I want to thank Lisa for joining us, co-hosting with us again today. It was such a pleasure to have you. And next week and the week after, I'm not recalling the dates off the top of my head. We're in a new month now, so I'm all thrown off by that. But
8th and the 15th.
Thank you, Megan. She's our human calendar. But we will be talking about substance abuse prevention over the next couple of weeks, and we have some really fantastic guests coming on, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to highlight the Northborough Southborough Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition that our department is very actively involved in. So again, thank you both for coming on today, and thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Nice talking to everybody.